the scorpion.
Mother Nature's finest killer, Mr. Wint.
One is never too old to learn from a master, Mr. Kidd.
Bruce Glover was chosen by producers Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman to play one half of the deadliest duo in Bond history. The experienced character actor was to partner up with the jazz musician Putter Smith, who had never acted before in his life. The trick worked, and an unforgettable set of henchmen were created. They were also the first openly homosexual couple in the franchise, and, depending on how you look at it, were progressive, regressive, or even a bit of both. When we learned the sad news of Bruce's passing, we wanted to pay tribute to the man who brought us one of the most enduring characters in the world of 007.
If you don't know, of course, Bruce Glover played Mr Wint in Diamonds Are Forever, which holds a special place in our hearts. And I wanted David, aka Licensed to Queer, to join me today, just to pay tribute to not only the man, but what impact that character had on his life and our lives as Bond fans. Now, I will put a disclaimer in. We're only here for a short period for this tribute, but if you want a full-on dissection, go to David's website, licensedtoqueer.com, and listen to our ridiculously long review, which we recorded about 5 years ago now, can't believe it, where we excoriate the characters, and we go through Bruce's acting as well, and the other things he's done. So we won't go into that now. We just wanted to just pay tribute to the man and the character. So, David, we heard quite late last night. It was quite sad news. He was 92, and he's always been a good ambassador for the franchise, hasn't he?
He has. You used the word excoriate there, Tom, and we were critical of the characterizations in Diamonds Are Forever on one level, but then celebrated them on another. I think actually that epic review of Diamonds Are Forever, I know you've subsequently surpassed the length of that review with several of your other follow-ups, but I think we must have talked about Wint and Kidd for about probably a fifth of the duration of that massive, I think it was 11-part episode or something in the end. And they are endlessly fascinating characters. Love them or hate them. I'm just glad that they exist. So as far as I'm concerned, this is going to be, in the words of the film, a glowing tribute to Bruce Glover's characterization of Mr. Wint. And I still sometimes get them mixed around in my head, and I have to do a little bit of a check to make sure that I've got the right one, but it's definitely Mr. Wint.
Yes.
Very moving.
Heartwarming, Mr. Wint.
A glowing tribute, Mr. Kidd.
I do remember you in the review saying, because it's like an awkward conversation in some ways, because we know the Fleming material isn't great in some respects. So you come into it with a bit of history. But for you, as a gay boy back then, seeing these two characters, you just said, I'm just happy to be at the party, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I always think any representation is probably better than no representation. And by representation, we mean, I've actually just written quite a big piece about this. We struggle to sometimes identify with characters on screen if they don't share certain characteristics. I've never struggled to identify with Bond or Felix or the girls or lots of characters in Bond. But it was the first time I'd ever seen a gay character on screen when I saw Diamonds Are Forever. I can't remember how old I was. I was 7 or 8 years old when I first saw that film. And growing up in the 80s and 90s, this would have been the late 1980s, I don't remember ever seeing a gay character on screen. There might have been people, TV personalities around, but not really in a fictional story, and particularly not in a series of stories that I loved as dearly as James Bond. So yeah, just seeing two characters, two men who were actually in love with each other. We never get stuck into Wint and Kidd's sex life, which is probably a good thing. But definitely seeing two men in love with each other was something which blew my mind, to be perfectly honest. And that shot of them walking away in the desert with them holding their hands has been burned into my consciousness for over 30 years now. So when I did my own little post this morning, having read your message, your WhatsApp message, I think you sent it at 2 a.m., Tom.
Yeah, I was
But
coming back from a night out, and I saw. I thought
I
I'd tell you there and then.
picked it up when I got up to. I had an early night last night, but I got
Good.
up to go to the loo, and I saw the message, and I was like, "Oh!" So I had a little bit of. I shouldn't have checked my phone. You should never check your phone
No,
in the middle of the
no.
night. But as soon as I woke up this morning, I decided that was the image that I would post on Instagram, because that's the image that meant quite a lot to me.
Yeah.
And it really did mean a lot to me. And I know there are some, as you say, I've written pieces. I get asked to comment on Wint and Kid probably more than anything else on other people's podcasts. And I even appeared in I think it was in The Independent, an article,
Yes.
which they wanted to get my viewpoint about it, because I think there's an assumption, because Wint and Kid are presented in some ways as offensive stereotypes, and that was one of the reasons why the British Board of Film Classification here in the UK actually upped the film certificate to a 12, which is pretty much unheard of, to actually increase the film's rating. They tend to go down over time as society gets a bit more permissive about certain things. But it was actually the kind of homophobic presentation of Wint and Kid that was one of the main reasons why that certificate increased. So it's undoubtedly homophobic in by modern standards, and probably, to be honest, by 1971 standards. I was actually sent an article, which is in one of my pieces on the website, from Dr. Luella Chapman, who found an article while she was doing one of her books about I think it was Gay News or something like that, a gay periodical at the time anyway, when Diamonds Are Forever was first shown on TV in the late 1970s. There is this piece excoriating the presentation of Wint and Kid. So there were a lot of particularly gay rights people who weren't a fan of the presentation, but at least for me in the late 1980s, it showed that people like me existed. So for that, I'll ever be thankful for it. That whole idea of a gay identity meaning just more than somebody you want to have sex with.
Yes,
I think it comes across really, really well in Wint and Kid, which was pretty brave, especially as if you consider in 1971 when Diamonds Are Forever was released. I'll just take a sip of my Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh, here we go. This is it. How good is that?
So in 1971, Diamonds Are Forever. So that was only 4 years after the partial. It was not actually, people always get that wrong. Homosexuality wasn't decriminalized completely in 1967, but it was only 4 years after the partial decriminalization of homosexuality. So to put that in a culturally, even if not financially, British film, 4 years after that was a bold move on the part of the producers, I think.
And even though, of course, they are villains, and that's part of the reason people say it's homophobic, that you're creating bad stereotypes, they're probably the most likable people in the film, I think. I know we're not meant to like what they're doing, of course not, but they're really engaging and they play the part so well.
If at first you don't succeed, Mr. Kid,
Try again, Mr. Wint.
I think we are supposed to be on their side in some ways. There's a sense of glee whenever they kill somebody. Because everyone they off, until we get to James Bond later on, when they try to off him in the least efficient manner possible, shoving him in a pipeline in the middle of the desert, whatever.
Love pipelines, don't they, the Bond series?
They do. But everyone they off until that point is a massive hypocrite, or just not a very nice person. And it starts with the dentist in the middle of the desert at the start in their first scene. And the way he delivers what we nowadays call a microaggression, when he kind of makes a conclusion about their relationship, he goes, "Oh, I see."
Oh.
He's kind of embarrassed, shocked, whatever, disgusted.
Dr. Tynan, good evening.
Who are you? And where's Joe?
Joe couldn't make it tonight. I'm Mr. Wint. This is Mr. Kid.
Oh, I see.
At that point, I think we're supposed to side with Wint and Kid, and we're supposed to take enjoyment in the fact that they shove a scorpion down his shirt. I mean, there's all sorts of connotations about lifting up shirts here in the UK. There was a playground insult bandied around when I was at school about lifting up shirts. But let's move past that one.
Ha! Ha! Curious how everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die.
when they kill Mrs. Whistler as well, she's a hypocrite, and I know we talked about this a lot on the podcast. And you had some very strong views about that, because she's ostensibly supposed to be someone who's very pious and very religious, but actually she's just as corrupt as everybody else.
Gentlemen, Joshua, I shan't be long, children. Joshua's going to read you a story. How nice to see you again. Where to this time?
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. Oh, how lovely. I shall have to bring back some pictures of the canals for the children.
Ask, and ye shall receive, Mrs. Whistler.
Thus endeth the lesson for today, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's a really effective way of doing it. And again, are we being revisionist maybe, that at the time, is Guy Hamilton and the scriptwriters just thinking, these are some fun characters, let's put these weird people in weird situations, and then we'll have these two bump them off?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think it's having its cake and eating it. We're supposed to be sort of, some part of the audience would be crept out by Wint and Kidd just because, it's two men holding hands, how disgusting. But there's nothing really that makes us not side with Wint and Kidd throughout the film. No. And I think we are supposed to delight in how grotesque they are in all their forms, really. I mean, the Bond universe, whenever anyone tries to say that James Bond is, very realistic and down to earth, I'm like, which film series are you talking about here? Everyone's larger than life. Everyone's exaggerated, particularly James Bond himself. Especially in Diamonds Are Forever, everything is just so silly in Diamonds Are Forever. I mean that in the best possible sense, of course, because you know how much I love that film. But everything is so silly in Diamonds Are Forever, I don't think we should really take it too seriously and overanalyze it. Although the ending of the film is the bit that always kind of leaves a little bit of an aftertaste, if I'm honest. And I think, so the part where Bond actually finally kills Wint and Kidd on the cruise ship at the end, and sort of like the most, I don't know, is it homophobic? It's definitely playing on the notion that men, for some reason, gay men are more sensitive in their posterior regions, which is, of course, complete nonsense, because pretty much all men are, unless you've had an operation or something, pretty much all men are exactly the same physiologically down there.
Ooh.
Well, he's certainly left with his tail between his legs.
Just the very end of the scene, isn't it? Because all the stuff was brilliant. The way that they sort of, waiting on, particularly Mr. Bruce Glover, he's magnificent, his performance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love the Bomb Surprise and all that.
A happy selection, if I may say.
I'll be the judge of that. That's rather potent. Not the cork, your aftershave. Strong enough to bury anything. The wine is quite excellent. Although for such a grand meal, I had rather expected a claret.
Of course. Unfortunately, our cellar is rather poorly stocked with clarets.
Mouton Rothschild is a claret. And I've smelt that aftershave before, and both times I've smelt a rat.
He's so committed to the role.
Yeah.
I know there are some people who say that Wint and Kidd, that there's a problem with the presentation because you don't get really much of a sense of intimacy between them. So you don't get the kissing, you don't get, really, really obvious lovey-dovey stuff. I interpret that as, and I don't mean sound unromantic here, but they're a couple who've been together for quite a long time, I think. And so they're not, they do public displays of affection. They hold hands in the desert, at least while no one's looking. And elsewhere, they don't really seem to care about what other people are thinking about them. But they're not that sort of couple anymore. They might have been that couple once upon a time. That look that Wint gives on the plane when Kidd says she comments on how attractive Tiffany Case is for a lady. I'm just like, and the look that Wint gives him, pauses mid-perfume spray and looks at him with pure jealousy in his eyes. And he's like, he's there in the role, definitely.
First, they thought I was a little too normal looking because they were looking for Sidney Greenstreet and Peter Lorre. Now, I can do Peter Lorre in my head, but I don't look like Peter Lorre. They wanted weird physical types. So when I got on the set, I looked at Putter and I thought, so we're gay. A lot of my character was based on just looking at Putter and enjoying him. Just in looking at him was an enjoyable experience. And I thought, but he's mine. He's mine. He's my toy. And now I've got like this possessive kind of thing.
They're both aboard. I must say, Miss Kay seems quite attractive. For a lady.
That jealousy came up because I had, in fact, the sense of Putter being my toy.
We've got to mention our friend Chris Eales as well. 007 Bookshelf on Instagram, and the Big Red Trousers on Twitter still, I think. But he wrote a short story, well, a short origin story about how they met and their love of killing, and that was almost what bonded them. And that, you know, we're talking about this time now of Amazon spin-offs. Is that something that you would like to see if they did one?
I would like to see, obviously, and it was a really fun story that Chris wrote. So there was also like a meet cute, really, between the characters while they were on a job together, and it would be an interesting story. Having said that, I'm not sure how palatable it would be. For me, anyway, I have a pretty low threshold for things like Dexter and anything which is involving following killers around. But I know those things are massively popular. So my husband Anthony, he loves watching murder, I call them murder programs. Oh, lucky watching murder programs again. So there is probably an appetite out there for that sort of thing. Personally, I'm not sure I could stomach more than a 4-episode miniseries. Probably not something more ongoing than that. It might be a bit grisly for me, but yeah, maybe a possibility.
And we wouldn't have Bruce Glover, of course, now. And just to go back to him, some of the scenes that he produces in this are magnificent, and the delivery, and it's hard to do it without trying to do an impression of him. You know, everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die. It's just wonderful, isn't it? I love it.
It is. And you can argue that, you know, like the BBFC have said that it's a stereotypical presentation of gay men, but he doesn't lean into, you know, like, once you actually try to list the things that are stereotypical gay male behavior, I can't think of any straight men that I know who don't have at least one of those qualities.
If God had wanted man to fly,
He would have given him wings, Mr. Kid.
I don't know, they sort of almost don't have any of those classic signifiers going on, but you still get a sense of a relationship. So actually, I would dispute the extent to which it is stereotypical. Especially for the time period. You know, if anyone knows anything about gay history at that time, the 1970s was quite a fiery period. Just before, so as we were coming into the 70s off the back of Stonewall, and we had the first gay liberation marches in lots of other countries, including the UK. It was quite a reactionary period against effeminacy, because they thought that it was quite regressive. But you do have a mixture of effeminate sort of characteristics, like spraying the perfume bottle.
I was just about to say.
And them also being quite masculine, traditionally masculine. So it is having its cake and eating it. It is. I think it is quite a rounded presentation of two men who happen to love each other and also be mass murderers.
Well, that's the case of so many Bond characters, isn't it? The ones we love, they are still really evil people. Most of these villains, you know, Volpe we all love, and she actually does take joy in all this. She, you know, it isn't just because they're gay. That's absolutely nothing to do with why they're loving killing people. They're Bond characters. That's why.
Yeah, and you could argue that them being together makes them more effective. They work better as a duo. Which is definitely the direction that Chris went down in when he wrote his story.
Yeah, two heads are better than one. And I mean, there's so much. Jennifer and I managed to go to Amsterdam a couple of years ago. We went on the Skinny Bridge, and I felt weird, sort of like recreating one of the most macabre scenes in the whole franchise. I think the pictures for the children.
It traumatized me as a kid. You know, I'm loving, you know, two men holding hands. 10 minutes later, they're hoisting an old woman's corpse out of the Amster. We went on the boat tour. We went to Amsterdam a couple of years ago. In fact, we spent most of the day with our friend Fenna Shout out to Fen, who lives in Amsterdam, and she loves the locations there as well. But we also did the boat tour just so I could go down the river and go. And as we got up the Amster,
yeah,
the
I had to do the same thing. Yeah.
Ahead is one of the oldest bridges in Amsterdam, the Skinny Bridge. It was built over 300 years ago by two sisters who wanted to visit each other every day. Unfortunately, they ran out of money, so that is why it is called the Skinny Bridge. On your right, those beautiful old houses can be seen in the paintings of our famous painter Rembrandt. And now, ladies and gentlemen, if you will look to your left as we go down the Amster, you can see... Oh!
Mrs. Whistler did want some pictures of the canals for the children.
How kind of you, Mr. Kidd. The children will be so thrilled.
I went earlier with a few of my schoolmates, and I was sort of basically line for line doing all that, and they were like, "Tom, what on earth are you on about? You're an odd man, aren't you?" But I had to do it, and it's that delivery of it. It's such a well edited film in that sense. I think it's so effective. That sort of shot of her coming out, and then on the Skinny Bridge.
I think it's fantastic. Diamonds is such a silly film, but it's also such a. We talked about this a lot when we did the massive review. It's also quite a scuzzy film.
Yeah, scuzzy is a good word. Yeah.
It's definitely got a whiff of decay and death about the whole thing. It is like I think the best thing to see Diamonds Forever as is like a black comedy. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why I love it so much. This is the black comedy Bond film. And what better characters to have in a black comedy than two gay hitmen?
They're not over the top, are they? They're not like. Yes, Wint is probably more camp in inverted commas, but they're not dressed up as carry-on characters at all, are they?
No, they're not over. They're not really. In the end, the only one who dresses over the top in Diamonds Forever, apart of the men anyway, is Bond himself. You know, wearing his white dinner jacket in a fairly scuzzy Las Vegas casino and standing out like sore thumb. Whereas they really blend in with the rest of society.
Well, that's the characters, aren't they? It's so well done how that they're prevalent throughout the whole film. Yet Bond, of course, never sees them because when they knock him out, it's from behind, and then it's that perfume, isn't it? It's almost like a detective. Bond goes in detective mode to see who they are because they have blended in. That's absolutely right. And when they go down and kill Shady Tree, I know you do see some of that, don't you? But you don't. The full deleted scene shows them actually doing it, and I'm glad they deleted that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, but he just sees them, and he doesn't immediately think, "Goodness me, I'm going to die here," does he? They're so unassuming.
Shady Tree. Shady, we just adored your act.
What taste, style?
And we have a few suggestions.
Critics and material I don't need. I haven't changed my act in 40 years.
Wow, but this one's surefire.
That's the oldest guy.
And this one will kill you.
Come on, fellas, a popping gun and squirting fly routine. You gotta be kidding.
Who's company, Mr. Wint? And Tree was a crowd, Mr. Kidd.
Yeah, and it is the perfume that gives them away. I must admit, probably every other day, if I put on aftershave, which I don't every day, but if I put something on, I do have the line go through my head. One of us smells like a Tarte handkerchief. Yeah. I can't help it. It's just such a brilliant line.
One of us smells like a Tarte handkerchief. I'm afraid it's me. Sorry about that, old boy.
I mean, the thing, I actually looked up just before we started recording Bruce Glover's other credits.
Yes, yeah.
And he did have, quite an impressive body of work as a character actor. I was struggling to remember anything that I'd seen him in apart from Chinatown.
Yes, I remember that.
He's not a major character, but he's, I think, a lot of people cast him for his interesting face, his interesting look. He really was a character actor. I've forgotten that he was in Ghost World in 2001, based on the Daniel Clowes comic. I really enjoyed that film. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm, an expert on Bruce Glover's other appearances. But whenever he appeared in a film, he definitely added something significant to it.
So we just want to say thank you to Bruce, and obviously our thoughts and prayers are with his family right now. And of course, Crispin, his son, is an actor who's had a great career as well. They're a very talented family, and in an unusual way that you don't maybe get as much these days. I think these actors are character actors rather than a sort of superstar. And the casting is fantastic for me for Wint and Kid. It's very unusual casting, and I think Bond films have often got that right. When you look back on them, you think, how on earth do they find these people?
Yeah.
You're really talking about unusual casting and brilliant casting. I think Bruce does such a fine job, and I just can't wait to watch this film again. I've probably not seen it in a couple of years, so I'm going to whack it on fairly soon, I think.
I think I almost overdosed on Diamonds Are Forever because I was doing that many podcasts, not just yours, but I'd been on so many podcasts. I've got another one lined up actually in a few weeks' time. And I just love talking about that film. It's just endlessly fascinating to me because it is just so weird. And I love it for that reason. But yeah, I haven't watched it for at least a few months. So you have to be in a particular mood to watch Diamonds Forever. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, I feel that mood coming on, so I might join you.
Well, we're both Diamonds defenders, and we want this great vibe to continue. It was very popular at the time, of course. Somewhere along the way, it went down again, and we're hoping to get it back up there. And certainly, everyone who, even the people who don't really like this film as much as the others, do single out Bruce's performance. So we've got to raise a glass to him. So
yeah,
rest in peace, Bruce.
Or a Diamonds Forever mug, at least.
Yes.
So long, James. I'll wire him you're on your way home. Don't tell him which direction we've taken.
If you're having a good time, let the captain know and I'll have him steam around in circles.